Sure. Thanks, Ben. And again, as always, thank every one of you guys for joining today. Just a quick update, on how the past week of practice has gone. We entered into the shell this Saturday, got our first scrimmage. We got about a half a game in. I think each group got about 45 plays where the coaches were off the field, game-like situations, and really felt it was a competitive go. I thought all three phases we left out of our first, full scrimmage, feeling really, really good about where we are at this point in spring ball, and really looking forward, to building on that as we enter into practice 10 today, which I think you guys will get an opportunity to come out, and looking forward to being able to see you guys out there for the first time today as well. And I guess with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Coach. We'll start with Scott Abraham.
Lox, is always good to see you. You said you like where your team is at right now. What is it that you've seen that makes you say that?
I think the big thing is, when you look at it from my view as a head coach, you want all three phases to show improvement. And when I looked at the scrimmage Saturday and yesterday, we were able to kind of how we treat a Monday after a game. We went through our grades. We went through all three phases with a fine tooth comb. And it was a really competitive scrimmage. Typically you have one side of the ball kind of dominate early, but I felt like, we did some situations where our one unit went against the two unit. Then we got to some situations where the one unit went against the one unit, the two unit against the two unit, as well as the three unit versus the three unit. And just to see all three phases be able to go out and operate and execute without it being really sloppy. We didn't have any major injuries coming out of it. So, to be able to get 45 game-like reps in and stay healthy, one competitive ebb and flow with, both sides of the ball, and then including the return game with our special teams, which we did scrimmage live on Saturday. So after watching the film, I just felt a little better about kind of where we are because, again, missing all of last spring, not playing a full season, and then really getting an opportunity to put the ball down and with referees there, letting the guys go play instead of where you have the scripted plays and everybody knows what plays get ready to happen. It was good to see how our guys were able to execute things.
And from now until the spring game, what's the next step? What do you want to see from your team?
I think it's improvement with each practice. We just got finished a staff meeting, and what I told our staff, with us going Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, after a scrimmage, which was a really physical scrimmage, and guys kind of, they should feel like they were in a car accident a little bit because of the physicality of it. When you give them Sunday, Monday off, it's always a natural reaction for Tuesday to be a little sluggish, and we can't have a sluggish Tuesday because we can't waste a day. And so really looking forward to seeing us in the next 5 practices kind of improve with each and every practice as we continue to kind of install some of the stuff in our offense, defense, and special teams that we can get on tape to be able to teach from and utilize over the course of summer as we get into our preseason camp.
Thanks, Lots.
No problem.
We'll go to Emily.
Hi, this is kind of a big picture question, but Coach Zook said that the rebuilding project here kind of almost reminded him a little bit of when you guys were at Illinois. And I was just curious if there were any specific things that or bumps that just reminded you of that experience. And then also just kind of having him here as a sounding board, as one of the few people who knows what it's like to sit in your chair, kind of leading that effort. How helpful has that been?
Yeah, I think for him, where it comes from, he's been here the last 2 years. So this is his first year as a full-time assistant, but having him here to see this thing kind of from fruition of me getting here to the last couple of years, his role as a senior analyst off the field and helping with the special teams part of it. But, I think when you look at the way we recruited comes into play there and how we were able to kind of flip the roster and bring in some talented players while also developing, some of the really good players that were in our system. I mean, those to me would be the comparisons. You would have to ask him to delve in a little deeper for it. But for me, I see it is us taking the next step in year 3 as a program that we should be taking. And, the metrics that we kind of utilize with the eye test of what we look like as a team, being able to maybe balance the roster numbers off out a little bit better to where we can practice and have 3 groups in the spring. And, one of the things that I look at that kind of tells me we're heading in the right direction is, when you've got 3 groups going and you've got really talented players in all 3 groups, it shows you that you've been able to create some depth and bring in enough talent to help sustain. Because when you play in the Big Ten, and especially playing on the Big Ten East, the side of things, depth is an issue, and you've got to have enough good players to last through a tough schedule. And, when you look at where we are, we feel really good about how we've been able to develop the roster, balance the numbers, and make sure that we have enough good players and we're developing the players in our program. And maybe that's where the comparison comes from for him.
Is this the best you've felt about the depth kind of just across the board since you've been here?
Say that again.
Is this the best you've felt about the depth kind of across position groups since you've been here?
Yeah, I feel like it's a little more balanced. I mean, we're still thin, obviously at the quarterback position, where we'd like to have a couple more guys, and then at the offensive line position. But just knowing now that when you look at the receiver group and how the numbers kind of are spread from guys that'll be leaving here after this season to the amount of freshmen we have coming in, when you break up 85 scholarships, it's important to make sure that you have enough at each position group, and it's more supply and demand than just going out and recruiting the best player. And just looking at the way the roster is kind of put together in year 3, and like I said, being able to have a 3rd unit in spring ball, which we haven't had here the last couple of years, it's been good to see.
We'll go to Lauren Rosh next.
Hi, Coach. So looking ahead a little bit to the spring game, you've been here for a couple years and you've done that game on Maryland Day and you're able to kind of interact with the fans. Obviously, this year's a little bit different, but after not having that experience last year, what does it mean to you to be able to at least do it in some format on Maryland Day this year and be able to kind of have that connection again?
Yeah, Maryland Day's always been a special day around here on campus because of the connection of our location, which we sell, just being able to be in this community that we serve as the flagship university in the DMV. It's great to be able to open the doors and have people here. Now, obviously with COVID and some of the precautions and mitigation things that we're doing, I still think it's a win for us at any point to be able to have our fans back in any form or fashion to see us and to see our team play, just like it is having you guys back out to practice today. And then for me, it makes it seem like things are working back towards some normalcy. So, not having it last year and then obviously going through what we went through as a football in general, I just think it's a welcome for us and for me to have our fans back. And again, with Maryland Day, being able to show off our campus to the community and people that are allowed to be back. I think it's always been great to have it on that day because, again, being the flagship university here in this area, it allows us to have a connection with our community.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
We'll go to Wes Brown.
Hey, Coach, sort of a more general question in terms of recruiting. When it comes to the quarterback position in your offense, what kind of stuff do you look for in a quarterback when you're out there trying to find the next guy?
Passer first, a guy that can win in the pocket. I think to be able to play quarterback at a high level in a league like the Big Ten, you've got to be able to win on 3rd down, win the situational battles, red zone, 3rd down, 2-minute. So for me, it starts with being able to win in the pocket as a passer. But obviously, some of the things we do require some functional athleticism. We don't want to recruit a statue back there, a guy that can't get himself out of trouble or extend plays. So, but to me, it always starts with the quarterback's ability to pass the ball first. Obviously, his ability to, lead. And as I always say, quarterback is judged by the points he puts on the board. So, when we evaluate quarterbacks, we look for guys that have the ability to put the ball in the end zone and get us in the right plays and show the right acumen in terms of making the players around him better.
And then when it comes to, recruiting that position, you sort of mentioned evaluating prospects. COVID's obviously made it difficult not being able to scout certain guys and all that stuff. How difficult has it made, I guess, your job trying to scout guys, in terms of trying to see them throw in person? I know obviously that's sort of a big thing.
Yeah, being able to see guys throw the ball in person is huge in our evaluation, because sometimes on tape you don't get to see and feel the arm strength of the quarterback. Fortunately for us, we recruit 2-3 years down the road. So as I said before, the 21 class and somewhat some of the local 22 guys we've maybe had a chance to put our eyes on, being out locally recruiting when we were able to. But then there's some that once this thing opens up, hopefully June 1st, we'll do everything we can to try to get them on campus to be able to evaluate them. I can tell you it's a different deal with certain positions, trying to evaluate off of tape as opposed to seeing it in person. But the high school coaches and all the people that deal with the development of these kids have done a really good job of providing us with some extra resources of videos and workouts and other things that maybe show us some of the things that we would want to have answered, but there's still nothing better than being able to put the human eye test on kids and see them play and do those things, which we're looking forward to hopefully getting back to here soon.
And then obviously one more thing, you mentioned June 1st. I guess how exciting is it for you guys knowing that, that next step in normalcy is getting kids back, in official visits? Obviously that's sort of a big part of the process that you guys missed out on last cycle.
Yeah, we're crossing our fingers. I mean, it hasn't been completely cleared that's the date, but that's what for us is when you run a program, we've got to have a plan in place that when it does open, we're prepared. So we're preparing for June 1st as if it will open. We will be able to have people back up on campus for official visits and unofficial visit capacities, some form of camps, depending on the local community and the guidelines that they provide us that we'll continue to work with. So, but I know we're excited about being able to, again, see the kids that we're recruiting. So much of recruiting is building relationships, and it's a little different virtually than when you're able to have someone sit down and feel the energy, the body language, them to understand the passion that I have as the leader of Maryland football for where I see Maryland football going. We're opening up our new facility here pretty soon. So with all this stuff happening all at once, it's a great time to be a Terp supporter and a great time to be a member of our football program.
We'll go to Alex Dacey.
Hey, Coach. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Alex. What about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the running backs. I know Tayon Davis missed most of last season. What have you sort of seen in his progression, given that he missed all that time this spring? And then what are you seeing from Isaiah and Penny sort of continuing to grow into their roles in the rotation?
Yeah, one of the benefits, that having Tayon back for what I would call a super senior year is that, he's a guy that's played a lot of football and, obviously been through some trials and tribulations here on campus. But the one thing that he's always done whenever he's been available is he's always brought it. The energy, leadership, he's well respected amongst his peers on this team. And even last year when he was unavailable for us to play him, he practiced as if he was playing. And I know it was difficult going through what he went through, sitting out last season and then missing the opportunity to play, and especially when, we only got 5 games in. But I can tell you, he was around our team every step of the way. He's been providing tremendous leadership to that running back room. And it's been a room that's been really good for us over the past 3 years since I've been back. And I know years prior to that, just with the guys that have come out of that running back room. And, I see him continuing a pretty good legacy of a guy that we expect to have a big senior year, provide leadership to a young group of talented guys like Penny, like Isaiah, who both showed flashes last year of the ability that we thought they had when we recruited. Now the goal for us is to get Penny healthy and then obviously get him back in time to get us ready. He's going through spring ball, but limited with having the shoulder surgery in the off season. but both he and Isaiah, we felt like from a mental standpoint and understanding, what it takes to be able to play in our system as a running back, both those guys fit exactly what we were looking for.